So good evening, everyone. I can see everyone filtering in at the moment. We'll just give everyone a couple more seconds just to get in and get settled, and then we'll get on with this evening's webinar. Fabulous. I can see a few people and that's great. So welcome to the latest Dot to Dot webinar this evening with our good friend Mark Dybel, who's going to be looking at improving performance beyond pay and perks. It's going to be a very interesting webinar. I'm very excited about it, Mark. So Mark's had a commercial career and has been for the last 16 years working with companies just like Dot to Dot. In fact, he's come and done some work with the team here at Stammer Insurance and Dot to Dot that's been very useful for us. It's a great subject area. Mark is a font of knowledge on this. I think we had a coffee and sat there for a good maybe an hour, didn't we, Mark, and had a chat about it also. It was great stuff. I'm sure there'll be lots of takeaways from today. But if you have any questions throughout, if you wouldn't mind putting those in the Q&A, and then we'll put those to Mark at the end of his presentation. If you have any specific questions that you want Mark to cover, by all means either put them in the Q&A or send them over to me at the end of the webinar and we can put them to Mark, and he'll be back in touch with you via email. If you want any specific information from Mark, and we'll make sure we get the contact information out to you all after the webinar. And again, as always, we will be sharing a recording of this webinar. So should you want to share it with colleagues, friends, that kind of things, that's absolutely fine. I'll send out the link potentially tomorrow, and if not, first thing Monday morning. So without further ado, I'll pass you over to Mark. Thank you very much, Mark.
Thanks, Mel, and just a welcome to everybody on what is a lovely evening. So you're investing an hour to pick up some good practical ideas to invest in your business to make it better rather than sitting in the sunshine. But it'll be a long sunny evening, so you can go out afterwards. So let me just share the screen. So improving pay and improving performance beyond pay and perks. And just before we dive into the detail, just a couple of pointers to get the most out of this evening's session. Firstly, just listen out for what's helpful to you. So if there's anything you don't agree with, or you feel that I might be wrong about something, just let that go. Just simply listen out for what's going to be helpful to you. By all means, note down your thoughts, your ideas, your insights. But at the end of the session, pick just one thing that you can do that's hopefully relatively simple and easy, and that stands a good chance of making your business better in some way. If you implement that and it goes well, you can come back to your notes and pick a second thing. And as Mel's already said, if you've got any questions along the way, just pop them in the chat to Mel. So the first thing to say is that, as small business people, we're operating in a tough environment. I mean, truth is, it's always been tough, but I must say it feels particularly tough at the moment. So small businesses still go bust at an alarming rate. And of the ones that survive, many are surviving hand to mouth, with many living off savings, often personal savings. And inflation's high, interest rates are high. And if you're a small business, it's difficult to borrow money as well. And as you will well know, the regulatory burden, it seems to get weightier every year. Good staff are hard to come by and seem hard to keep, with many people now wanting greater and greater flexibility. And there's just to my mind, a general feeling of uncertainty, both amongst consumers and the business community. So whilst we're operating in a tough trading climate, and most of those things I've mentioned, we can't actually influence. There's nothing we can do about those things. But recruitment and retention is an area where we can do something. We have got an opportunity to improve things. So the information I'm going to share around motivation and engagement will allow you to positively impact your staff retention, staff performance, and by extension as well, make you a more attractive organization to work for. So what motivates and demotivates people? And a little bit tongue-in-cheek there, but do carrots and sticks work? Well, they do. Yes, they do. Reward and punishment strategies can work. However, the carrots keep having to get bigger and the sticks have to get sharper. And often if we take away the carrots and sticks, behavior tends to drift back to what it was before. So carrots and sticks often produce movement, but they don't produce motivation. So think of motivation as it's something that's self-generating. It's almost like it's like an internal driving force. And we can't actually motivate people directly. What we can do is create a culture and a relational environment that increases the likelihood of people being motivated to work for each other and to work for the common good of the business. And what we know about employee motivation is built on some foundational work that was done by a very influential American business psychologist, a guy called Frederick Hertzberg, and his team of researchers way back in the 50s and the 60s. And the principles they established then haven't really changed much over the last 60 odd years. And that's because they tap into basic human nature. So anyway, we're gonna start off with some audience participation, and I'm going to share with you 16 factors that can affect somebody's motivation and demotivation to different degrees. So I'm just gonna we're gonna list those on the screen as they run through. And what we're going to do, Mel is going to run a poll in a minute, and you all get 3 votes each. And you're going to pick the 3 things that you think have the biggest impact on somebody's motivation. And the way Zoom works is we're limited to how many multiple choice answers we can have. So we split the 16 into 2 groups of 8. So you can pick 3 things from the first group, or 3 things from the second, or 2 from one and 1 from the other. So hopefully that makes sense. So they're the 16 factors. And hopefully if the technology works, Mel is now going to, I might have to stop sharing my screen. And there we go. So there are the 16 things split into 2 groups of 8. So if you want to pick 3 things, as I say, it can be 3 from the first, 3 from the second, or 2 from one and 1 from the other. And we'll see what everybody thinks. I can't actually see the results coming in, but I'm assuming they're coming in, Mel.
They are, yes, they're coming through now, Mark. That's fantastic. Okay. There we go. Everyone's answered now, Mark. So what do you want me to do with these results?
Are you able to share them? Does it give you that
let me see whether I can do that.
Or you might just have to name the top 1, 2, and 3.
To follow on from my previous technical issues earlier, Mark, I'm still having a problem with that, but I can see the top motivators according to people attending at the moment are salary.
Okay.
Followed by relationship with subordinates.
Okay.
And then the third one is personal advancement, but salary wins by a long shot. 86% of people have said salary. Okay. With other ones coming up the rear, so work conditions, and relationship with peers and the work itself. Okay. But yeah, salary, relationship with subordinates, relationship with supervisor are the ones that have done so well.
All right, well, let's see what the data actually tells us. So I'll go back to screen share. Okay, we should be able to see that. Oops, press the share button. Okay, so what we've got, just to display the results, are that we've got a scale on the top there. It starts on the left with -50%, which would be something that was strongly demotivating. all the way through to plus 50% on the right hand side, i.e. something that's very motivating. So top of the shop, let's start off, and by coincidence, let's look at salary. So salary, if I just explain the bars, so green is motivating and red is demotivating. So what it's telling us is that when we get salary right, when we get someone's pay correct, let's say correct, it would be on the right hand side at the end of that green bar. But if we get somebody's pay wrong, or their incentive, their pay, the money they receive, it's demotivating. But as you can probably gather from where salary appears on the screen and the fact that the bar's not very good, it's telling us that salary can be motivating when we get it right, but it's not actually as highly motivating as we imagine. So, I mean, perhaps just think about this on a personal basis. Certainly for me, back in the days when I was being paid, it's almost, regardless of what I got paid, whether I thought it was good or not, I always tried my best and wanted to do well, and it was difficult not to. So typically, we always tend to try and give our best, and our people are similar. So we should be aiming as a business to be sufficiently profitable to pay our people fairly and decently, ideally above average, and in the top quartile for our sector. But the hard data, the evidence tells us that we shouldn't assume that our people will be highly motivated as a result of being paid extremely well. So there is some motivation, but not necessarily high motivation. Just to look at, just put on the screen something that is the strongest demotivator. So this is the big one, policy and administration, and basically onerous and paralyzing policies, rules, procedures. Yes, we need them, but let's aim to make them as light as possible. It's much better to have people operating responsibly within a handful of guiding principles rather than being constrained by endless do's and don'ts. So I'm not saying you don't have any rules. I'm just saying it's best if we can minimize them and people are operating within broad principles. So policy and administration, the green and red mix there, it says if they're super duper brilliant, they'll motivate, but not very much at all. But if we get them wrong and they're too onerous, they can really demotivate people. So the next two I put on together, and that is supervision. So two related potentially demotivating factors. One is poor supervision, and secondly, a supervisor that we don't get on with. And it's a fact that most people don't leave a job. They leave their supervisor. And when I say supervisor, I'm meaning their immediate boss. So that could be a team leader, a supervisor, a manager. So the data tells us that we could be, working for Richard Branson, but if we have a lousy supervisor between us and him, there's a good chance that we would leave. Just to fill in the gap, the one there is working conditions. So let's aim to have decent working conditions for our people, but the takeaway is that they're not a strong motivator. So what are the strong motivators? Well, the one on top of the shop, the most impactful one is achievement. And we are goal-seeking beings, and we naturally relish challenging tasks. So tackling and completing challenging tasks and being recognized for that, it gives us a strong sense of achievement and fuels our motivation to tackle other challenging tasks. And very topical at the moment, if we want to build resilience and self-esteem and motivation, the most potent intervention is achieving difficult things. So the question really is, how can you create appropriately challenging tasks for each individual that reports to you? How can you structure someone's role to make it challenging? And in many cases, we need to put effort into defining the outcomes of what we want people to deliver without necessarily telling them how to achieve those outcomes. So obviously we need people to, do things correctly, but the less prescriptive we can be, the more we can leave it up to them, the better. Just below achievement is, and it linked to it, I've already mentioned it, is recognition. So it's ensuring that there's an appropriate feedback mechanism to recognize people's achievement and the progress they're making. So again, my question would be, how do you feedback? When do you feedback? And how often do you feedback? And also to think about the feedback that's suitable for each individual. And we're not talking about annual awards here. What we're talking about is everyday feedback for doing a job well. So week in, week out, and making feedback as specific as possible and as sincere as possible and appropriate. So it's not about going over the top. It's just about being observant, seeing people doing things well and pointing that out to them, regardless of, the fact that they're being paid to do that. The work itself, again, we want to do meaningful work, and the people who work for us want to do meaningful work as well. And people want to know that what they do counts, that they're actually making a contribution, and it's feeding into that bigger business purpose. So thinking about how each individual's role contributes, and do they know that? So often talking to them and pointing out how what they do contributes to the overall purpose of the business is really important. Below work itself, we have advancement, and this can be a challenge actually in small organizations, particularly with a flat structure. It can be quite tough. And in many cases, we want to keep people doing what they love and what they do best. Certainly my experience in the corporate world was often people got promoted into management roles because that was their only way of earning more money. And management's just a different skill. It's a different job, and it doesn't suit everybody. So we need to think about how we can add more challenge and more responsibility to people's existing roles, and to be able to pay them more to stay in those roles, not necessarily move them. So in enlightened organizations, sometimes it's appropriate that a manager, especially a new manager, may actually be getting paid less than somebody they're managing who's at the top of their game, but wishes to stay doing what they do best. So that's something to think about. We've got responsibility, and again, it's we often think that people don't like taking on responsibility, but people do. And when people have a sense of ownership and control over their work, they get more achievement and more satisfaction from it. And responsibility gives individuals a higher level of enrichment in their jobs, and they can make more of a contribution and take greater pride in their work. So generally, more responsibility it improves efficiency and effectiveness. And we need to think about where we can, giving decision-making authority to people as well, to allow them to make day-to-day decisions in terms of how they deliver their job. So just thinking about people's roles and how they could have more control over the content of their work. And with all these things, I'd encourage you to start small, but expect your people to solve some of their own problems. I can guarantee, I know for a fact that you will all be good problem solvers, and we like helping people, and we're good at it. And the truth is that we like to be needed. It gives us a sense of achievement and importance, but it doesn't necessarily help our people. And sometimes, even though you know the answer and you can give the answer quickly, it's better to turn it round and send someone away to solve their own problems. And just the final one in terms of the motivators is personal growth. I mean, when people have the chance to learn and to develop new skills and to advance in their careers, that, you know, feeds into them being more motivated and more satisfied with their role. And we probably, hopefully, we probably intuitively know all these things. They're true for us, so they're going to be true for our people as well. And certainly in my experience is that many people have been conditioned, you know, whether it's by their parents or their school or other employers, that, you know, they just get told what to do. But the truth is, underneath, when people are encouraged and they're nurtured, you know, their core human nature comes through, and, you know, it is very similar to ours, even though, you know, they might not have as much responsibility as we do. Just to fill in, there's a gap at the bottom of the screen, and there were some other things in there. So there's a whole host of other things there where, again, they've got the potential to motivate and demotivate, but none of those things are particularly strong. So just a few takeouts. Firstly, that motivation is an internal job. We can't directly motivate people. We can help create an environment, and we can role model and behave in a way that increases the likelihood that people will be motivated to perform at their best. And I'd say there's no neutral. It's almost like everything we do either motivates or demotivates. And I think sometimes that's a good question. It's like, is what I'm about to do, or is what I'm about to say, is that likely to help someone feel motivated, or is it likely to demotivate them? The strong motivators are different to demotivators. So if you don't have achievement and the opportunity for people to achieve things, the absence of it doesn't mean to say it demotivates them. It just means we're missing an opportunity to motivate them. And similarly, you know, the policy and administration, if we get that fantastically right, it doesn't demotivate them, but it doesn't necessarily motivate them. So we go, I mentioned that one. A big one for me, it's that achievement and that recognition. The achievement one will take a little bit more thinking. The recognition one, if we're not doing it already, is something that we can ramp up. That is a relatively easy win. Okay, so just moving on. So looking at engagement, there's a big crossover. You'll see as we go through this, there's a crossover between the things that motivate people and the things that drives engagement as well. And the reason why we're interested in engagement is similar, really, because there is a strong evidence base that there's a strong correlation between how much our people are involved in what they're doing, are enthusiastic about it, are committed to it, emotionally committed to it, to our business purposes, our business aims, and financial performance. And on a personal level, engaged people, it's someone, they're giving their best, and it's someone who's going to flourish in their role. It's going to give us a broader, just a broader contribution beyond someone just doing their job. People will be more innovative, more creative. They'll be better at solving problems. In fact, there's probably likely to be fewer problems in the first place. And the workplace is more harmonious, it's more cooperative, we'll get better decision making, and engaged people, you'll know this from firsthand when you get somebody who's really engaged in what they're doing. They're more attractive to customers, to parents, and they're also attractive to people who may are looking to join a business. And generally, there's just more energy about the place, and your workplace just becomes, it just becomes a nicer place to go every day. That's my experience. That's my observation. So just a few, I just want to share some hard numbers. So what I'm going to share is it's based on work that has been done by the Gallup organization, and a little bit about the work on motivation. This is all grounded on really fabulous research. So this is hard data, and Gallup over decades, 75 odd years, they've run their engagement surveys in over sort of 5 million organizations. So they've collected in excess of 40 million responses from people. And this is across 200 plus countries and nearly 100 different types of industries. So it's really solid data. But their results, this is the impact hard measures. So attendance way up, absence, down by over 80%. Depending on the type of organization, some organizations by their nature are fast turnover organizations, but employee turnover down by between anywhere from 10 to 43%. Accidents down by 2/3, well-being up by 2/3, customer loyalty, customer service up by 10%, and productivity up by nearly 20%. And a key one, profitability up by almost a quarter. Okay, just before getting into the detail, just a word on the surveys that Gallup run. So and I should say anybody can run these surveys. It doesn't have to be Gallup, but they did formulate them. And they came up with 12 statements. And these have been refined over a long time. They're very precisely worded. But there's two things. There's one, firstly, they've run the surveys, but the surveys by themselves aren't enough. So what really makes a difference is ongoing conversations on the back of those surveys. And they're ongoing with your line manager. And the other thing about an engagement survey, it's what we call a headlight measure. So most of our business measures look backwards. They tell us what's happened after the event. So if you just think about the financial things that you may track, and i.e. we can't do anything about the past. We can only do something about the future. So a headlight measure tells us something about our future performance. So if engagement levels are low or are falling, our financial performance at some point in the future will deteriorate over time. Conversely, if engagement levels are rising, all things being equal, our financial performance will improve in the future. So a couple of other things to say about Gallup's Q12. It's been around a long time. So the first thing to say is it's out of copyright. So facilitators like myself are quite free to use it. And the second thing, this is true of not just this survey, but any survey. So surveys create expectations that something's going to get better. So just a word of caution, if you run a survey, be prepared that you have to do something about the results about it. And the third thing's linked to that, really. It's just saying that on the back of running a survey, the key is to share the results, to talk about the results, and then to commit to an action plan as a result of those discussions. And my experience in doing this for over many years is that those conversations are very positive. People really do care. And certainly the way that I facilitate the conversations is that we get the team as much as possible deciding what it is they want to work on, what actions they'll commit to over the coming weeks and months. And I guess it's slightly easier for me because I'm that objective outsider who's used to facilitating these discussions. But an aim for me is that as I carry out that role, I want the business owner to be doing less and the team to be doing more. You don't get off scot-free. So there's some things that you're likely to do to potentially enable the team to start working on some of those actions. The statements are organized in a hierarchy. So you can see them on the screen. There's a pyramid. And in essence, what that's saying is that it's better to start working on generating a high score for statements 1 and 2 than it is for 11 and 12. Anyway, let's dive in. I can see already that I'm overrunning slightly, so apologies for that. So let's crack on. So the first statement is that I know what is expected of me at work. So people get a number of options here. One end of the scale, strongly agree, and at the other, strongly disagree. And you'll be shocked, you may be shocked, you might not be, that Gallup have found that only 50% of people can agree with this statement. Managers feel that their people, all of them, know exactly what's expected of them. So when we're writing role descriptions, we need to make sure that we're avoiding business jargon and ideally want to focus on outcomes, results, deliverables, what we want people to deliver, and to make sure that these are dynamic documents as well, because roles do change, they adapt, the world changes, and we need to change people's roles. But it's important to get feedback from people, especially early on, in terms of their understanding, asking people in their, to say in their own words what they understand their role to be, and to keep going through that little loop until people do, they get hold of what it is that you're asking them to deliver. And then we have to be observant as well as to how people are performing their role. And the first question we should always ask ourselves is, do they actually know what we expect them to do? We have to answer that one first. Second question linked to the first one, the second basic need is, I have the materials and equipment to do my job right. The right tools for the job means higher productivity and someone who knows that you care about them. So if someone hasn't got what they need to do their job well, it results in lower productivity and a feeling that really what that person does isn't that important. So really, it's just as simple as asking people, what do you need to be able to do your job to the very best of your ability? So then the second tier of questions, there's 4 statements here. Statement 3 is about round pegs in round holes. The job fits a person's talents, skills, passions. So we need to be recruiting well and discovering and matching someone's strengths to those required to do the job well, and then developing that person to making sure that we're deploying that person to the work that they were recruited to carry out, rather than sending them off to do something that actually we didn't employ them to do. It's another topic, another webinar, but you might want to look into a tool like StrengthsFinder, which is brilliant in terms of helping assess what somebody's strengths are as part of the selection process. So I guess the question here is, have you got any square pegs that you're trying to hammer into round holes? And if you have, what might you do about that? Statement 4, in the last 7 days, I have received recognition or praise for doing good work. You can see how that links back to one of the things we were talking about in motivation. And a key one here is the time. It's the 7 days. It's the regularity of getting feedback on doing a good job. And we tend to get more of what we focus on. So rather than drawing attention to what people don't do well, draw attention to what they do well, and that will grow and it will squeeze out the things that they're not so good at. And I'm not suggesting let people do things that are unsafe or anything like that. We've got to address those immediately. But as a general principle, focus on what people do well. And recognition, make it prompt, make it appropriate, proportional. Some people like, or most people like, public recognition. Some like private recognition. So get to know your people. And sometimes just, something like an old-fashioned letter outlining how somebody has made a great contribution that drops on their doormat on a Saturday morning and is opened in front of the family, then I promise you, can be truly life-changing. So perhaps ask your people individually, what's the best recognition that they've ever received? Statement 5, my supervisor or someone at work seems to care about me as a person. We all want to be treated as an individual, not as a worker. And when we feel that someone genuinely cares about us as a person, we tend to be more loyal and trusting, and that results in better performance. So someone at work cares about my development. So similar themes. So when someone's looking for opportunities for us, how we can learn and develop, we feel more valued as a person. And obviously in the process, we become more skilled and more useful as well. And again, as much as possible, that's not an annual conversation. It's almost like a daily conversation. So having an expectation that people want to learn and grow. And just something as simple as asking people on a regular basis, so, what have you learned this week? Or what have you learned over the past month? So that people get into the habit of looking out for what they're learning. The next level up is teamwork. And the first statement, at work, my opinion seems to count. The truth is we don't have all the answers. And actually thinking that we do or should do is a great burden to carry. So simply asking other people what they think and taking notice of what they say, what they share, ideally allowing them to run with some of those ideas is powerful and often produces better results than us thinking that we've got all the ideas. And additionally, it precipitates a greater sense of ownership and commitment and collaboration as well. So I'd suggest get into the habit of asking people, so what have you seen, or what do you think we could be doing better? The mission or the purpose of my company makes me feel my job is important. And I'd say this is one certainly over recent years, post-COVID, this has become even more significant for many people, and particularly young people want to be part of an organization, a business that's doing something good, that in some ways is making people's lives better. And we want to be proud of the business that we work for. We want to feel that what we do actually matters. And I'm not talking about posters on the wall necessarily. I'm talking about, having a purpose that's simple, that's easily understood, that you talk about on a regular basis, that actually guides what you do and helps you make decisions. So perhaps, again, asking people how they see the overall purpose of the company, checking out, what they think. Are they in alignment with what the purpose of the organization is? And how do they feel their work fits in? Get them thinking, get them talking, and listen to what they're saying. Statement 9, my associates or fellow employees are committed to doing quality work. The truth is we're all influenced, for better or for worse, by our peers. And if our colleagues are delivering to a high standard, we'll want to do the same. And together, collectively, we'll be fostering a culture of excellence. We're far more likely to support each other as well, and importantly, to hold each other accountable to doing good work. I have a best friend at work. We're social creatures. We're designed for community, and we need to be part of a tribe. So having a best friend at work, it means that there's someone around who will support us emotionally, who wants the best for us, who ensures, they make sure that we don't feel lonely or isolated. The growth, the final two statements. Statement 11, in the last 6 months, again, time frame is important. Someone at work has talked to me about my progress. So this is an opportunity just to step back and to assess somebody's contribution, their performance over a longer period of time. And it's an opportunity to talk about future objectives, particularly that are going to help someone to learn and grow in the process of fulfilling those objectives. It's important it's an opportunity for people to recognize what they're good at and what they enjoy. Usually those two things go together. And it's also another opportunity to clarify performance expectations. So my question would be, are your progress meetings with your direct reports scheduled into your calendar? And please, as much as you can, don't ever postpone them. There's nothing better for communicating to someone that they're not very important than cancelling or postponing these progress meetings. And the 12th and final statement: in the last 12 months, I've had opportunities at work to learn and grow. The Gallup studies show that only 1 in 3 people can answer this statement positively. So creating a culture of continuous improvement and personal and professional growth is going to foster a really vibrant and innovative workplace. And it'll keep you competitive in the marketplace. It'll help with retention. And we should remember that resilience and self-worth are built through achieving difficult tasks. So the 12 statements, you don't need to copy them all down. You'll be getting the slides. Just rank there in order of importance. It's and just reiterate that it's really important that it's more important to get strongly agree responses to statements 1 and 2 than it is on 11 and 12. And often with clients, we just focus on those first few real basic things, and it never ceases to amaze me how impactful they are. So just looking at the key drivers for engagement. So meaningful work linked to a meaningful business purpose. And I feel that you will have that. And so that's a relatively easy one to do, to link up what people do to what you're actually aiming to achieve as an organization. Help people focus on what they're good at and what they enjoy doing. 80% of what somebody does should be really enjoyable. It's something they're cut out for, something they're good at. Positive relationships with caring managers, ongoing constructive conversations, opportunities for achievement, learning, and growth. And let's remember, greater engagement equals improved performance and better financial results. Should say as well, it just makes life easier, better, more enjoyable, and in my view, it's just the right thing to do as well. So there's one final thing to say, just going back to where we started, that the time we spent together, the last 40 minutes, will only be of value if you take something out of it and actually make it happen. So pick one thing, ideally something you're excited about, something you think, yes, we could easily do that, and yes, it's going to make a real impact. Go away and do that, and the last 40 minutes will be time well invested. So apologies for running over slightly. I'm going to hand back to Mel now, and we will try and answer any questions.
Thank you, Mark. That was really interesting. I've taken lots of notes, as always. So I'll just see if there's any questions coming through in the Q&A. I've got a couple of things as well that I wanted to ask you. So on motivation, is there a way to correct a demotivation? If you go, oh, I did that, what can you do in that circumstance if you think, oh, I've demotivated that person? What's the best solution?
Have a conversation. Just speak to the person and just say that what I've just said or what I've just done, I've just realized that on reflection, I shouldn't have said that. It's probably unhelpful. So I'm really sorry. A better thing to have, so just admit your mistakes. And that's very powerful in itself, because that gives other people permission to say, oh, it's okay to say I made a mistake. Perhaps I should have done this, or what do you think? What would have been a more helpful thing to say? So quite often, to get into the habit of, rather than telling, of asking as well. So mistakes are good because it just shows that we're human, and I'd encourage. So ideally, we don't want people to repeat mistakes, but we want people to share them and to learn from them and do something better. So it's an opportunity to, ironically, Mel, to actually, turn it into something very positive, even though you might have done something that you feel was demotivating.
It's really useful. Thank you, Mark. I'll bear that in mind. I often think when I speak to you, I always think of things to help me at home as well. I always think your tips are useful at work and at home. So looking at staff engagement, how do you go about this? You're measuring it by doing the Gallup questions. Then what
Yeah.
what do you do next?
Well, I mean, I would, in the very first instance, I'd just pick that first thing. So if you say, oh, I wonder how good we are at, do people really understand what we expect of them? And I'd probably just go and ask them and start there and just say, just in your own words, just tell me, what do you get paid to do? What are the key deliverables in your role? And see what people say. And they might be a little bit shocked and they might need to think about it. But it's just a really good place to start. What I do, so if people can see the benefit, they can see the benefit of doing a survey. My caveat is, as I mentioned, if you do a survey, it creates an expectation. That doesn't mean to say you should shy away from it, but you need to count the cost in terms of, if we do this, we've got to be committed to some action on the other side of it. But getting an outsider to do the survey, because they haven't got an agenda. The survey, it's nice because it's simple, it's easy to do, the results are confidential, everybody does it, and it gives you an agenda for a conversation, in essence. And I would suggest probably doing it annually. Sometimes you might want to say do it after the first 6 months, but it's a good way of introducing an agenda for a very positive improvement conversation with the team. It gets people talking, and the people I do it, I'm not necessarily surprised these days, but the people I do it for are always pleasantly shocked by what people come up with and how much they care. So yeah, that's a long answer to a short question.
No, that was fantastic. Thanks, Doc. And then my final one was about positive relationships. So you mentioned a lot about staff having a positive relationship with a supervisor. How do you foster those positive relationships? Because obviously people in a workplace are from all walks of life, all different people, aren't we? How do we get those positive relationships?
I would say I guess a structural thing is that making sure that somebody in I'm going to say supervisory role, it could be a manager, a team leader, but somebody who has direct reports, is making sure they don't have too many of them. It's recognizing that more work will be done through the people than you can do yourself. So it's I liken it to learning to touch type. So you start off with 2 fingers and you go quite fast, and to get faster you've got to go backwards, you've got to use up more of your fingers. So you've got to accept that yes, sometimes it's expedient for you as a manager to do things and do it because you can do it fast, but actually that doesn't help your people. So the positive relationships come from, and this is true of home as well, it comes through spending time with people, in essence. So it says, particularly, a new starter might be, there's 10 minutes at the end of every day to sit down with them and say, right, how did you find today? And you do that for the first week, and then you might move it to weekly, and then you might move it to monthly. But you always schedule in those monthly meetings with your direct reports, and they do most of the work, and you give them a notebook and you say, as you go through, I want you to note down what goes really well, what highlights did you have, what did you learn? And then, so again, they're doing the work, but you're facilitating conversation, and you're getting to know them, and you're dedicating time to them. So I think having some kind of structure, a meeting structure with individuals is important. And it's probably the most important. So there's lots of important things, but I'd put it at the top. So that's why I'm saying about ring fencing those meetings. So if a client, a customer, a parent wants to see you, sometimes, okay, I do accept sometimes you can't get out of that and you need to do it, but most times it's like, actually this person is more important. I'm not moving their meeting, because that just communicates that they're not important. And I'm not going to answer my phone. In fact, my phone's off. It's in the drawer. I'm fully concentrated on the person in front of me, because they're a person, and they deserve my attention. So it's those sorts of behaviors, and it's about noticing. I tell you what, it always amazes me when people. I was with an organizer, it was a charity actually, and somebody on the back of one of these conversations pointed out to a member of the team, they were only 16 or 17, a part-time worker, and about doing something well. And they overheard this person talking to someone else, and they said, that's the first time in my life that somebody's told me I've done something well. And it makes me feel well. I feel welled up now that an individual, a child, a teenager, can say that. So it's those little everyday simple things that can make a massive difference.
Fabulous. Thank you, Mark. Well, I think we'll all be going around our teams tomorrow, telling them how fantastic they are and passing comment on great things they've done. So I think that'll be my takeaway. That's going to be my job for tomorrow, is going, that was amazing. Well done. So I guess that all means to say thank you, Mark. That was amazing. We really enjoyed that. I think, there's one more question come through. Let's just see.
And could I do one other thing before we finish, please, Mel?
Of course you can. I'll just put this question to you.
Okay.
So things are difficult after COVID. Staff leave to bigger groups that offer more pay, give bonuses from the start, even help pay their debts. We're a small group of staff stay because we encourage them to contribute, and they are happy to do so. But I think it does not work like it used to. So it's the fact that the world's changed post-COVID. Have you seen that, Mark? Are people looking for different things?
They are. So certainly in the nursery sector, one thing you can't ever get away from is being physically present. And there's a lot of people who want to work part-time, who want flexible working, who want to work from home. So that's a tough one. And it's tough when, bigger groups are paying more, and even relatively modest improvements can, people see that as being very attractive. And there isn't an easy answer. I mean, it's a difficult one to answer in some way, but couple of thoughts. My experience is that many small organizations undervalue what they do. They could actually be, they offer more value than they charge for. So that, i.e., they could put their prices up and have more money and have more flexibility. And to talk to people on a regular basis about what they get out of the job and what it means to them, and to almost keep educating them on what it's worth to them. And we have to be a little bit creative and the things we've talked about this evening. But I'm not naive enough to think that sometimes we do lose people. And it is hard. There isn't an easy answer, but I do believe that often, the small groups can be charging more than they do, and through that be able to reward their people more. And I tend to find, more motive, and I accept that, it's difficult because you have these ratios of how many people you have to have. I was going to say that, often motivated people are more productive than they are. But the truth is that you guys can't get away from those ratios and things, and that does make it difficult. So there isn't an easy answer, but it's an important question to consider and to look at creatively, to work hard at. And as a business owner, as a nursery owner, to dedicate quality thought to how you improve the situation, and not get caught up in doing we have to do what I'd call lower value tasks. Dedicate time to that is important. Schedule time in your calendar to think through that, particularly with your team, and perhaps with the wider team, with the whole staff team, to say, how do we put it out there in the open and say, listen, I know that we all love working here, but how can we make it work for us? How can we make it work better? How can we afford to pay people more? What do we need to do? So we don't have to have all the answers ourselves. We can open it up, and that in itself might just help people say, well, we could do this, perhaps we could run this additional service, or these parents say that, could we do that? So your team may actually come up with some of the answers as well.
Fabulous. Thank you, Mark. So I couldn't find my unmute button then. I was being quiet and listening. So I'll pass back to you then for your final bit, Mark. Thank you very much again.
It's a pleasure. My final bit is to ask, well, I've got 2 final slides actually, and here's the first. Perhaps I'm doing too much. So that QR code on the screen, we all like feedback. So we've mentioned the importance of regular feedback. So that QR code will allow you to give some feedback on the seminar. So ideally, it'd be great to hear what 1 or 2 ideas you've taken away and will implement, and what impact they might have on your business. And again, just as an encouragement to anybody else who might want to come on the webinar, what would you say to them, whether they should come or not? So, and I know Mel's going to send out my details. So if anybody, wants slides or has got any questions or anything else, I have actually got a book as well that covers all sorts of business topics. So if anybody like it, we can buy it, but I'm very happy to send people a complimentary copy as well. So just drop me a line. In fact, should I put the next slide on? So there we go. So if you want to take a photo of that or screenshot it, they're my details in the book. And me without glasses and short hair. So
Thank you very much. That's a very generous offer. Thank you, Mark. I'm sure there'll be lots of people getting in contact. As Mark said, I'll be sending the recording out later this week, if not early next week. And if you think of any questions, you can go, oh, we should ask Mark that. By all means, bob them on an email and I'll get them over to Mark, and I'm sure he will respond. Or if not, email him directly. So enjoy the rest of your evening. Hopefully, I can't see outside at the minute. It looks like it should still be sunny. So
yep,
is it sunny there, Mark?
Yeah,
Fabulous.
still sunny.
Brilliant. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon.